challenges from London 2012 was to embrace culture and to make sure that we embrace not just the culture within our own country, but we make every culture in the world feel part of what we were trying to achieve. So that was our starting point, and how to introduce this kind of ethic and ethos into what we're thinking about. So what did we do? We addressed the 3 Ps, and they're slightly different 3 Ps to the ones that you heard about this morning. The 3 Ps that are important in all the work we've done in the legacy across 20-odd countries in the world for the Olympic Games are the ones on the board there. We have to look at the policymakers and the strategic stakeholders, the practitioners, the adults and all of that, and then the young people. The 3 Ps are very, very important to us. So in order to pitch for what we thought could support the Games, we had to get in there and find out about the delivery team, and that was LOCOG, the London Organising Committee of the Games, and find a way to ensure that what we were proposing addressed what they wanted. So we worked very, very closely with the legacy and the education cultural team and said, we've got a great idea, can we come and pitch it to you? I think one of the things that was quite brave was they were willing to listen to people outside of the LOCOG framework. In other words, any idea is a good idea, we need to make this happen, and just because we have paid experts on the panel doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. So that's what we did, and we pitched it at what they wanted. Very importantly, we knew that any major big games, every bid has to identify something unique. It's not enough anymore to say we've got an infrastructure, you know, we'll do wonderful events and this will be this will be this. There has to be uniqueness. And one of the things we felt we could contribute to was making the games more universal worldwide. We also looked at other organisations in the UK that might be interested in funding this. We looked at Sport England, one of our government organisations who are responsible for the delivery of community sport and increasing participation. And we spoke to local stakeholders as well. The practitioners, the people that want to implement the games, what we've done, we made sure that the traditional games that we were developing fit the school curriculum and what a curriculum might need to offer. So we looked at the programmes of study and what that might mean for them. And we looked particularly at the International Baccalaureate, which is the international qualification that many schools in the UK now do, but certainly schools across the world. And we looked at practitioners as the workforce, people going forward, the volunteers. The participants, well, we wanted that to be our young people all around the world. Where did the idea come from? Well, the Youth Sport Trust has been established for 20 years, and we started off, as my boss, Baroness Campbell says, with a set of resources, which are the top cards and a little blue bag of equipment, and we just went from school to school saying, we can help you make your PE better, because we know there's an issue. So we started with the top cards, which were specifically designed to address the sporting needs of young people. And our top cards have got something that's trademarked to the YST, which is make them high quality and fully inclusive using something called a STEP process. We use them to deliver the UK curriculum. So when we pitched the LOCOG, we said, how about if we go to all of the 21 countries that you've asked us to do work in, and we ask each of those countries to come up with a traditional game that they feel proud represents them. And interestingly enough, Malaysia came up with Sepak Takraw, which we now have in the pack. And a committee of young people, Olympic officials, local stakeholders came forward with a game, and then we designed them at the Youth Sport Trust into the games for the Olympic Legacy Programme. And because they're adaptable as a design, what we did on the back was we integrated what LOCOG wanted in terms of Olympic values and key messages that could be delivered through sports. So we designed these, they were very flexible, and they celebrated the different nations. All the schools in the UK got a copy downloaded to them, so they could learn a little bit more about the countries that were coming to the Olympic Games. And interestingly, in each of the 21 countries we were working in, delivering training as part of the legacy, we were able to introduce them to other games. In actual fact, there is a takraw competition that happens in Cheshire every year because those schools particularly took it on board. So what's been the impact? Because we've heard a lot about legacy, and that, you know, there's data that says all sorts of things around legacy, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. Well, in terms of this is our legacy. There's been over 9,000 sets of this resource, which are online, downloaded around the world. What we did is, what we do is we train local people to be trainers of young leaders, and they train young leaders who then hold sports festivals and other events in their communities and become volunteers. So we got the legacy programme to integrate the traditional games into the festivals of sport. And we now have additional countries coming on board that are running traditional games festivals. We have a National School Sport Week in the UK, which Youth Sport Trust has responsibility for administering on behalf of government. And the traditional games are integrated now into the National School Sport Week in over 6,000 schools. So many more schools are being introduced to them. And we're now working with 3 countries and ministries of education to integrate the legacy pack into the IB curriculum in their schools, because one of the key components of the IB curriculum is to learn about games from other countries. One of the things that I haven't got on there, which has been an interesting development in terms of legacy, is countries are now starting to come up with even more traditional games, because it's very difficult to identify one game that represents your country when there may be many regions and many different people. Here's just a few examples of our work using the traditional games around the world. In the top left-hand corner, that's at an Olympic values festival of sport. We train Olympic Centre managers and volunteers to integrate different sports. And that's a group of young people in Senegal playing sharke, which is a traditional Tanzanian game. The 2 pictures with a handkerchief, that's the card you saw, that's the handkerchief game from Egypt. And this was one of the games that I integrated into some work we're doing for the United Nations Sport Development and Peace Office. We're leading the training for them at their camps around the world. So this was in Guangzhou in South Korea, where we had young people from all over the world, and we introduced them to some of these games. And many of these young people downloaded them and have taken them back to further spread them in their own nations. And in the bottom right-hand corner, this is a game of Kho-Kho, which is a traditional Indian game, and it's now been integrated into the primary school curriculum for young people in Pakistan. So we work with the Ministry of Sport and we've integrated it into their programme. So finally, what would I say are successful strategies? Thank you. This one works, whoever's next. Okay, so what worked for us? Well, it was getting in very early with low cog to make sure that our ideas could be heard before something firm was made in terms of the programme, and being clear about our vision and values. It's very much about having that multi-layered approach. It is about getting in with low cog or whoever, the organisers, but it's investing in training. If you just deliver the cards or the ideas, they'll fall by the wayside. So it's important, we believe, to train people how to run these games so that they're inclusive, adaptive, safe, etc. So they're delivered in a qualitative way, and they're delivered in a way that is true to the value of the game, that doesn't get diluted if people have not been trained. So we invest in that, and they in turn train the other people. and it's the young people, it's the peer-to-peer training that actually encourages the legacy to carry on. Finally, one of the things we do to keep that legacy alive is we encourage countries where there has been training and there have been adults that have been trained to form their own committees and develop their legacy cards using the same design. When we train these people, we train them to use the top card first because it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy of how to use a game in an inclusive way with large numbers of people with very little equipment. And then we introduce them to the traditional games. So that is the investment that we put into them, and then we encourage them to continue to develop further games. Thank you very much.